All right, let's talk about something that's happening all around us, almost invisibly. It's a battle for your attention, for your beliefs, for your mind itself. We're going to unpack this idea of political herding and explore what it really takes to reclaim your own thoughts in a world that's just so incredibly noisy. So let's dive right in.
And I want to kick things off with a question that, might be a little bit confronting, but just take a second and really think about it. Are your political beliefs, the ones you hold near and dear, are they genuinely 100% your own? Or is it possible they're being shaped, maybe even nudged, by forces you don't even see?
You see, the central idea we're digging into today is this concept of being herded. Not in a physical sense, of course, but mentally. It's this subtle, constant process where powerful forces, informational, political, gently guide us into these ideological pens, steering us away from truly independent thought.
Now, the antidote, the countermeasure to this herding, is something called cognitive sovereignty. Think of it as the ultimate freedom, the freedom of your own mind. It's our ability to think critically for ourselves, to come to our own conclusions without being pulled along by the crowd or, by some hidden agenda.
And this quote really brings it all home, doesn't it? It frames this not as some abstract philosophical debate, but as a real fundamental choice we all have to make. Are we going to be passive passengers just herded along for the ride? Or are we going to stand up and take the controls of our own minds? The stakes are that high.
So how does this herding actually happen? Well, the first place we have to look is inward. We need to understand the psychological traps that already exist inside our own minds. These are like the unlocked back doors that make us vulnerable to begin with.
And in our digital age, wow, we live inside these structures. An echo chamber, that's where everyone you listen to already agrees with you. It feels good, but it makes your beliefs seem like the only possible reality. And then you've got the filter bubble, which is even sneakier. That's where algorithms literally hide opposing views from you. Both of them do the same thing in the end. They shrink your world.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because it's not like these are flaws in our character. They're just mental shortcuts. Confirmation bias, that's our brain trying to feel secure in what it knows. Herd mentality, we're social animals. But these natural tendencies get exploited. They get turned into levers to push us to conform, to interpret facts in a certain way, and to simplify everything into a big us versus them fight.
This quote absolutely nails the danger of that last one. When we get trapped in this us versus them mindset, this binary thinking, there's just no room left for nuance, no space for common ground. And you just can't solve complex, messy human problems when you're only given two warring options. It's a recipe for tribalism, every single time.
But our own psychology is only half the picture. To really see how this herding works on a massive scale, we have to look at the powerful external forces that are pulling these psychological strings. And according to our source material, one of the biggest by far is the influence of concentrated wealth on our political system.
And this influence flows through three main channels that all work together. You've got campaign finance, which helps get certain people elected. Then there's lobbying, which works to persuade those same people once they're in power. And underpinning it all is this web of financial secrecy, which makes it incredibly difficult to even see who's pulling the strings in the first place.
A perfect example of this is something called dark money. Just look at this flow. The money starts from a source that you'll never know. It gets washed through these shell companies or nonprofits, and then it gets dumped into these super PACs. And these groups can then spend unlimited cash on political ads. So what's the result? You see some attack ad on TV, but you have absolutely no idea who paid for it or what the real agenda truly is.
And the scale of this, it's just mind-boggling. Lobbying alone is a multi-billion-dollar industry every single year. I mean, think about that. That's not some side hustle. It is a massive, highly organized machine dedicated to shaping laws to benefit specific interests. With that kind of money, it's no wonder the loudest voices are often the ones with the deepest pocket. And all of this leads to a really dangerous phenomenon called regulatory capture. This is when the watchdog basically becomes the industry's lapdog. The very agency that was created to protect the public interest ends up doing the bidding of the industry it's supposed to be regulating.
This happens a lot through what they call the revolving door, where regulators leave their government jobs for high-paying gigs in the industry they just oversaw. So why does any of this matter? Because it hits us where we live. It completely distorts the political process. It can shift the tax burden. It makes people cynical, making them feel like their vote just doesn't count anymore. And ultimately, it just erodes trust in the entire system, widening that gap between the super wealthy and everybody else.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a combination of these internal psychological traps and these massive external pressures. So what on earth can we do about it? Well, this last part is all about the solutions. It's a two-pronged strategy for fighting back and taking back our cognitive sovereignty.
Part 1 of the cure is all about us. It's personal. It's about building up your own mental armor against this stuff. And that means consciously working on your critical thinking skills, becoming more media literate, deliberately seeking out opinions you don't agree with, and just catching yourself anytime you fall into that simplistic us versus them trap.
And this slide really gets to the heart of that internal shift. It's about moving away from indoctrination, which is basically a closed system where you're told what to believe and questioning is forbidden. It's about moving toward what the source material calls a sovereign faith. And that's a belief system that you build yourself, one that's open, that's born from your own choices, your own questions. That's what makes you truly resilient.
But look, personal change isn't going to cut it on its own. The second part of the cure has to be systemic. We have to change the rules of the game. And that means big structural reforms, like public financing for elections to drown out the big money, much stricter rules for lobbyists, and just radical transparency so we can all see who is spending what to influence our democracy.
And so here we are, right back at that fundamental choice we started with. It's not really a political question, is it? It's a deeply human one. Will we be active creators of our own future? Or will we be passive subjects, managed and manipulated by others?
And I think this is the perfect thought to end on. Reclaiming our own minds, our cognitive sovereignty, it isn't just about protecting ourselves. It's a collective mission. It's about making sure that the future isn't designed by a tiny handful of controllers, but that it's built by all of us, for all of us. A future of connected individuals, not a herded mass. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.